Goes wild. Trust me, you can't hear them at home, but they are in the studio and they are losing their minds for the show tonight. This is Common Direct. I'm your host, JD. We do this every Thursday here in Brooklyn. Tonight on the show, we'll bring them in just a few moments. It's Kristal and Neiweem returning to the show this first time. But for the first time, Kristal Knight as well. One more liberal voice, one more conservative voice. The idea is to find common ground and all the things in between. And my God, I know if you're like most people, you're watching, you're saying, what? Really? Him to that job? Fill in the blank here, whoever it is. Maybe it's Pete Hegseth, the DOD, or RFK Jr., announced the Health and Human Services a short time ago. We'll get into all that and much more for the busiest political stories in our world the last 72 hours with a little bit of a different spin, a different approach. So we want to bring you perspectives that make you feel just like a little bit better about things. I'm going to bring in our executive producer, Taylor Craig, and get his take. I mean, dude, I guess honestly, man, just like, pick where you want to start. As we came in here, the breaking news the last few hours was RFK Jr. to Health and Human Services. Your thoughts either on that or, again, anyone else who's been named to Trump's cabinet the last few days?
Yeah, I mean, the RFK nomination is definitely a surprise. I was not expecting that. But, I mean, this is Trump trying to, I think, widen his umbrella and try to bring folks in. I mean, these were, you could say a lot of people that were believers in the RFK's campaign weren't exactly aligned with the left or right. And this is like what he has done successfully throughout his campaign is just sort of broaden that. Now, naming RFK the HHS secretary is, I think, a little more ambitious than what some might say, other than just including somebody in your campaign. But regardless, there's obviously been a lot of talk about how our food supply in America, and there's been viral posts about how people just go to Europe and they end up losing weight, even though they're just just eating like crazy. And maybe there's something up with our food supply and the things that we actually eat. But yeah, this is a deep-seated American issue that I don't think a lot of politicians have really addressed. So, I mean, it's a little bit of you don't know what you don't know with RFK and getting involved here, because I think there's a big base of people that actually care about that and actually really have deep concerns about our health.
It's like, it's not really a secret at this point. They're very loud and proud to be photographed with their, so it's a lot of Trump supporters, traders on the floor of the stock exchange. And I got to work today. Some of these dudes were so thrilled, like, oh man, Matt Gaetz is going to be awesome. Pete Hegseth's going to be awesome at the Pentagon. I was like, fellas, no disrespect, I got bad news for you. You got a lot of these names that have been floating around. They don't stand, in my personal opinion, a chance to pass that nomination. You need 51. Let's not forget, you got 3 sitting senators coming into this new Congress. They voted to convict Donald Trump and Murkowski, Bill Cassidy of Louisiana. You get Tom Thune down in North Carolina. He's kind of on the fence about Trump support. Mitch McConnell I can't imagine Mitch McConnell's going to fall in line with all this. So Taylor, it doesn't leave you a lot of votes. I see a Rubio. I think maybe the path's a little bit easier for someone like former Representative Gabbard, but I think for a whole lot of these, I feel like Trump's just, I don't know, he's trolling people, he's throwing out some names. I personally cannot imagine these people passing the Senate. Does anything like that jump out to you as being a fair read, or am I?
I think the line here is these are popular choices with individual bases. Like these are actually like quite fascinating. When you're talking about Tulsi Gabbard leading national intelligence, that is an isolationist type of person, right? Like that's somebody who believes that we've overextended ourselves in other wars, and she's taken this position and she's talked about it very extensively. Whereas you have Marco Rubio, who talks about how Israel needs to ardently defend themselves very aggressively, and the U.S. needs to do everything to support it. So I guess I'm not really seeing like a total through line as far as like a cohesive philosophy behind these picks. I think they're just really attention grabbing names, and they really wanted to either get a rise out of certain people. That's just my perspective. But these are legitimate picks. I mean, they're out there, they're published statements, so they will go through the confirmation process and we'll see what happens. Trump still has a lot of sway over the Republican Party, so I wouldn't say that it's dead on arrival. A lot of these, I think there's a very, very real chance that all of these come to fruition. I would love to hear what our guests have to say about this. Appreciate you having me on your show, JD, but
All right.
I'll let the experts weigh in.
All right. More for you, man. That's like half the fun. You're right. Let's bring in our guests. Chris Neiweem is a political advisor. He's a lobbyist, a publicist, and a Iraq War veteran, and a writer. Grateful to have him back on the show. And join us for the first time is Kristal Knight. Kristal is a political advisor, founder at Organized Tennessee, and a former political director of Priorities USA. Special thanks to both of you for being here. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having us.
Of course, Kristal. I would love. Let's start with you. I mean, honestly, take your pick of any of these names. If the incoming administration wants us to talk about, it's impossible not to talk about. One thing that on the market side, it was impossible not to notice how sharply the sell-off was for big pharmaceutical companies right at 3:30 when the story broke about RFK Jr. to HHS. I mean, the Pfizers and the Mercks of the world, they I don't want to say they went into like a free fall territory, but stock sold off late in the day. Your take on that, or any of the other picks that we've heard from the incoming president, Kristal?
Yeah, I think what Donald Trump is doing actually seems to be more of a marketing ploy. So he is attempting to put forth names of people who've been loyal to him, absolutely knowing that they have no high chance of getting confirmed. But what he's doing is showing that he's been loyal. I will offer your name up. And if the Senate doesn't confirm you, then his hands are clean. He did what he was supposed to do by just offering to put their names forward. But absolutely, I don't see where RFK Jr., Matthew Gaetz, even Tulsi Gabbard is a stretch that they will get through a Senate confirmation. I do think that Marco Rubio seems more plausible. Maybe the guy from Fox News. I'm not even sure or certain on that one. But I think, again, Donald Trump's position is, look, I told you that I would be loyal to you. I told you that I would put forth your name for a major position in my cabinet. It is not up to me if you get confirmed. Now, obviously, he can put his thumb on the scale, but really, this is a way for him to show the folks who, like, again, who've been loyal, that he would do anything to support them, but absolutely understands that there's a bigger political play here. And I don't see half of these folks getting confirmed.
Fair enough. We're having some audio challenges, so we're going to work to get Chris back up. But Kristal, to your point, I wonder, this reminds me of the conversation we used to have back in 2016 a lot. Remember the whole, like, do you take Donald Trump seriously or do you take him literally? And this kind of reminds me very much of that. It's like, how many of these picks do you take seriously, versus are we taking them too literally? What are your thoughts on how Democrats can try and position themselves against these appointments? I mean, obviously, you need a 51 vote for the full Senate. So Republicans or Democrats are kind of limited there what you can do. But whether it's support or public opinion, I mean, it's got to be some effort from Democrats here to try and blunt what they would undoubtedly view as the worst of some of these picks.
Absolutely. I
No,
mean, listen,
absolutely. And I apologize because I could not hear Kristal through that.
Oh, hold on one sec, Chris. If you got us, let me kick that back over to Kristal because that's who I sent the question to. But then I'm gonna bring you right back in, my man. Kristal, you started. Go ahead.
sure. I mean, I think the thing that, again, Donald Trump is doing is creating a marketing strategy. He wants to grab headlines, which is what's happening. We're talking about this now. This is on all mainstream media, talking about the folks that he's put up. But he also knows, like I stated before, that there is a political play at hand where you have to get through these confirmation hearings, and many of these folks will cancel themselves out. And so, when you ask about literal, I think we have to, from a party perspective, you have to believe everything that Donald Trump says that he's going to do, but you also have to know that there's a serious unseriousness about his character and some of the people that he's picking, because there's in no way do you pick someone like Matthew Gaetz, who also has been the subject of a DOJ investigation, to be up for attorney general. Like, what calculus is he, concluding to even come to that particular nomination? And so I don't think that we should be surprised by anything that Donald Trump does. But I also think that there are guardrails in place, and there are sensible Republicans who will say some of these confirmations or some of these appointments are unnecessary.
We're going to get Chris's shot and Chris's audio back up. But Kristal, while it's just something that give you the opportunity to chat, one of the things that was interesting to me this week was watching the closed door vote for Senate Majority Leader, and the idea that John Thune. I mean, obviously we're in a part of the party where Mitch McConnell no longer feels that he can fairly lead the GOP conference in the Senate in the world.
Is it a feeling or is it a capability? Because I mean, Mitch McConnell should probably resign, right? We talk a lot about age and ageism, and we've seen Mitch McConnell have these freezes. And so it may not be a feeling, it may just be a capability piece right here.
Fair. I had forgotten about that, so you're definitely not wrong. Your sense on someone like John Thune being able to come in and perhaps give up Senate power in the form of advice and consent for these Rush nominees. I mean, it really seems like you're dealing with a party in the high chamber that's willing to let Donald Trump do what he wants. I know it's only been 8 days, but we're already having some pretty serious conversations about changing the way that Capitol Hill works.
Well, I'm unsure that every single person who is a part of the GOP is truly loyal to the antics of Donald Trump. Are they loyal to their party? Sure. And so we should expect that John Thune would be someone who would carry out the business of the party as usual. But Donald Trump is an unusual character. So we're talking about someone who has done unprecedented things, who's even attempting to try to grab power back from all the legislative branches and really try to dictate things from the Oval Office, even as much in that he doesn't want to have traditional background checks. That is something that we've never seen in this government. And so becomes the new Senate Majority Leader, will they actually continue to hold the guardrails of power that have guided our country since its founding, or will they turn over the reins to Donald Trump to let him do whatever he wants and put whoever he wants in charge, and understanding that, again, this is an unserious government that is attempting to be formed under his leadership?
And there's no doubt. A lot of supporters would say, well, he was kind of given a mandate. I mean, I looked before we came out here, and I know the numbers are still shifting around here a bit, Kristal, but it looks right now to be a popular vote differential of 2.9 million. And I think their argument would be like, well, listen, we voted for the person we wanted, and if he wants to put Mickey Mouse in as EPA administrator, he has like every right to kind of do so.
Quick break.
What?
Technical difficulties.
Okay, actually, listen, this is live, folks. This is how we do it. Chris, we're going to take a quick break. Please stay with us. We got some technical difficulties we got to iron through. So please hang out. We got more with Kristal Knight and Chris Neiweem coming up. back like nothing ever happened. Okay, here we go. This is going to be very important. So important. Kristal, can you hear me right now? Loud and clear. It's coming through crisp.
Yep, I can hear you loud and clear.
Chris Neiweem, here for the party. Can you hear me?
I sure can.
Now we are cooking. Let's go, folks. Listen, these things happen. So, Kristal, thank you for that because you helped me kind of dance through. We kind of need to build some time. So let me bring in Chris here. Kristal and I were going through, obviously, a lot of the conversation with regards to President Trump's cabinet picks, and then the debate of, like, do you take these seriously? Do you take these literally? Chris, from how you're positioned on the right side of the aisle, how do you see a lot of these picks? And I'm sure you understand that there's more than a few eyebrows being raised at least a couple of the names.
Sure. Well, I had a good idea that some of them were going to happen before that they did. It depends on your outlook on politics. I mean, there's been a certain establishment rhythm to presidential elections the last several cycles prior to Donald Trump becoming a presidential candidate in 2016. So if you hold the belief that President Trump is, this completely outside the box candidate that's just so unpredictable, I think you'd understand these picks better. I mean, this is just an extension of his approach to politics, which has had a lot to do with populism and, as he's described, ratings. I mean, he's understood entertainment and cable and attention grabbing. So for some of these, I think, and I have different views on these different nominees, but it's just an extension of his personality and his sort of reception to the way that he's viewed his treatment by various entities within politics. So, President Trump was a entertainment television guy, business executive. So he is outside the box. So these picks, I think, are an extension of his personality and preference.
Chris, how do you answer this question? I will have you answer this question. Andrew Stadelberger asks, is there a brute force play here where they send out too many firebrand nominees to be denied? I think it's actually kind of an extension of part of an argument I was thinking of earlier, which is how many of these is Trump just kind of dangling out knowing that they're going to be denied, so then he has more of a leg to stand on to say, fine, well, you didn't give me who I wanted for Attorney General, so go with my second pick instead. And that's actually the person he wants.
It could be, and to my knowledge, there'd be some sacrifices there. If Representative Gates resigns his position and then's not confirmed as Attorney General, you're really hanging out there. So I think his intention is to move forward. Confirmation processes are difficult. They're supposed to be difficult. I mean, if you're the opposition, if I'm the Democrats, I'm digging for everything right now. I'm preparing lines of questions. I'm doing research on these candidates. Some of them, like Pete Hegseth, for an example, I know Pete well. He's done a lot of veteran work. I found this interesting because one of the reactions was who the blank is this? That was one of the quotes, and it's a anonymous defense lobbyist. So it's like, okay, anonymous defense lobbyist makes their whole living off of, I don't know, again, it's an anonymous person. And then many of the generals, well, going back to President Eisenhower, they have a way of supporting the military industrial complex. I would argue, I was a sergeant when I got out of the Army. I served in Iraq. There are generals that have been sitting behind their desk their entire career that never went to war. So, who's Pete Hegseth? He's an Army combat officer, Ivy League educated, has testified in front of Congress, has made a lot of things happen. And yes, he's become a cable news personality. And I'd argue a lot of his policies within the military would make it a lot stronger. So was President Obama qualified to be president? Because I feel like Pete Hegseth and Barack Obama have very similar credentialing level when it comes to the way that you look at an office. And, and just one last reference that I wanted to tie into this is, President Truman, he was referred to as very disparaging as this small town guy, this senator, this has no, this farm boy, and he goes in there and he ends up making a crucial decision relating to the war that ended up winning World War II. So again, it's fair play to criticize it, but this idea that it's crazy, I don't necessarily think it's crazy. I just think it's atypical.
And I'm going to stay with Chris just for one more to balance it out while we got the audio going. I think the challenge, and I agree. I think the thing for me is and I know Democrats and people are going to do this and be like, look at all these outrageous things he said when he was on Fox News. Like, if you're on cable news, you're doing media, there's a bit of a shock and awe factor to things you say. Like, God forbid I'm ever picked for a cabinet or I run for office. I probably don't want my entire media career dug through and be like, this one time 9 years ago, you said this in half a sentence, right? And it gets absolutely blown up. But Chris, do you have confidence there that you're going to have 51 votes for someone like Pete Hegseth, given the Susan Collinses, the Lisa Murkowskis, the Tom Tillises of the world, the Bill Cassidys of the world? I mean, it already seems like there's a lot of skepticism on certain picks, Pete included.
And there should be skepticism. That's the whole point. The Senate is supposed to do their job. They're supposed to look at legislation and make sure that it's good and thorough. They make treaties and they have to confirm nominees. It's probably one of the most important things they do is confirming nominees and probably working on treaties. But it depends. I mean, what's so controversial? I mean, within the military, especially some of this like sex reassignment surgery and things, some of this stuff I think is absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy. It has nothing to do with national defense. And so he's touched on some issues that, again, it's interesting. You know, I mean, the reality, I mean, and some of these are much more controversial. We could go into a whole sidebar, right? So like, for example, women in combat roles, other issues that have been they haven't really been front and center per se, but you know, there are different standards when it comes to certain divisions. So we look at special forces standards, we look at general military standards. He's had a more traditional role on some of these, and you know that may be looked at as extremely controversial, but I don't really think so. And some of this I've experienced when I was deployed. There's certainly many. I'll just go there on one of these. There's certainly a variety of advantages that both men and women bring to so many different categorical things. But when it came to deployment, there were many women that I served with that struggled with carrying the weapon systems when we were in Iraq. So whether that's M249s and other things where they had to be relieved. So if him talking about some of those issues is controversial, great, because a lot of those woke policies actually just, and again, that's a sort of a general millennial term now, but for lack of a better term, just less safe.
Kristal, we're all in the spirit of trying to find some common ground. I don't know if there's an answer to this question for you, but do you look at any of these names, even like an Elise Stefanik to UN, John Radcliffe to CIA, Kristi Noem to take over DHS? Are there any of the more maybe expected picks here that even as a Democrat, you could sit there and be like, all right, it might not be my first pick, but I'm willing to give it a shot. I'll have optimism for the role.
I think the only one that I mentioned earlier really was the Marco Rubio role. I'm not necessarily fully versed on every single person's background. I think, you know, to the conversation that we've been having about Hegseth, just because someone is a veteran doesn't necessarily mean that they are equipped to serve and to lead a country, particularly around things that are related to foreign affairs, military affairs. I mean, I think I'd even put the question back to Chris. If you're an Iraq veteran, do you feel comfortable today, given the dynamics that are at play, if you were nominated for a cabinet position with the limited experience that you have to serve our country?
That's a great question. I mean, again, it would go back. My initial response to this would be: was Barack Obama qualified to be president? I would have anyone.
Well, I mean, he was a sitting U.S. senator.
He was in there for I think 2 years, and he was in there for a very short period of time.
Well, the length of time and the ability to be elected are two different things, right? And so the length of time is one thing, but he was a sitting U.S. senator when he became president.
Arguably accomplished nothing. See, that's what I'm getting into. So Pete Hegseth.
But you're when you talk about experience, the ability to accomplish something is subjectable, right? Like that's subject to your own interpretation. But when you talk about experience, qualifications, if someone has run for office and they've been elected to the U.S. Senate, there's an argument that can be made that they were qualified to run for a higher office. I mean, if we're going to go the qualifications route, Donald Trump didn't hold any public office before he became president of the United States, and yet we're here again, and we're about to enter into his second term. And so I think when you talk about atypical candidates, which you've mentioned, you said Donald Trump is an atypical person. Some of his picks are atypical. We have to throw out the window this argument around what people are qualified or unqualified to do if we go back and look at what history has shown us over the last decade.
Sure. No, well, I guess I would agree. But that's where it's interesting is, I guess the question is, would they do a good job versus do we think they would do a good job based on what they've done? So I think that's the key thing. So with the President Obama example, it's, well, he was in the U.S. Senate. He managed to get elected to the United States Senate. So therefore, automatically, there's some sort of standard that he'd be a good president. But we'll to common ground, common threads, right? Neither President Obama or Donald Trump served in the military, right? But they ran the military. And I think there's a certain principle that we want civil control over our military. So there you go. But from an experience perspective, whether it was Pete Hegseth, who was an Army officer, in some ways I have some commonalities with him just with our profile, right? But if I was thrown up there tomorrow, they would all be crowing the same thing. But it's still like, I've deployed to Iraq, I've testified in front of Congress, I've worked on treaties, I've negotiated on behalf of my clients in China. I mean, if you put me up against the average American, I'm going to have way more experience. So again, I think it's more kind of the survival instincts of some of these nominees, whether it's going back, and I was watching then Senator Biden questioning Anton Scalia. It's supposed to be tough, but it's interesting that, I guess my point is that the same standard that's being held where people are laughing at this gentleman, I mean, and I've read his books and I know him, but, Army combat officer leading troops in a war. He's worked on a policy at the VA to reform healthcare to assist veterans. And he's worked, and he's a smart guy. So again, I guess you can't do everything.
Is that enough though, Chris? I mean, you're a smart guy. Is that enough to lead in a cabinet position? I think I want to just interrupt you here and ask, I like some of the ways that you're framing this conversation and the argument, because you're framing it less from a qualification perspective and more about ability to perform the capabilities that are needed to execute the job. And so maybe we should reframe the question and ask, do you believe that he has the capabilities and the qualifications that are necessary to lead in this role?
I do. Absolutely. And I think part of the reason President Trump's put him in there is because his allegiance is going to be to this sort of outside disruptive culture and not the military industrial complex. And for anyone that's worked in the defense community, there is a lot of narcissism and egotistical stuff out there. And I think part of the reason President Trump did this is because he's read all the letters from X amount of admirals, all this, that are kind of going after him and everything, and just kind of the arrogance of all that. I think this is kind of a response to it. And if you look, for example, Hillary Clinton, Kamala Harris, they've got strong, I mean, their resumes, I think, are extraordinarily impressive. And then yet, it's certainly in the case, I think, of Kamala Harris, there's a lack of orientation or experience. So again, we get into, I think, how someone's going to do, and then how someone's going to do based on what we know now. I don't know that anybody is actually fully ready for a job. I mean, think about all of the cabinet nominees have had to go through confirmation. I think if they ask themselves in reverse, they're more prepared once they're in that role and they're running down the field. I mean, the same thing could say for anyone that's been through the military, basic training. Most of us are crying the first week, or thinking about crying, or wondering how we can crawl over the fence at night and get out of there. Like, what do we get ourselves into? But it's a process. So I guess my point on Pete Hegseth is, yes, I believe that he is qualified to go through this process and he would stand up well. I think it'll be tough. Some of these, I don't see a road to them getting through, but they have to win over those senators. And again, they would be considered atypical, but we're in atypical times. And one last point is, one of the talking points of the Trump administration has been no new wars, but that's a fact. So, if his choice is in line with his political theories and we haven't had wars, maybe we should give some thought to all of these generals and all of these admirals. Maybe their goal really is to make sure we stay in perpetual conflict so they can justify their existence. And so I think President Trump's, this is consistent with the way he thinks, right? So, and he likes people that like him, which him and Pete have got a relationship. So, again, I guess that's the thing is someone qualified with what their background is, or will they be qualified once they're in the job? And again, they're going to face a heavy amount of scrutiny, as they should.
Yeah, I think, Chris, I think I'd say to your last point around the loyalty, Donald Trump has really liked everyone until they made a decision that he didn't like. And so I think on the position of loyalty, we've seen over and over again in his first term in office that he picks people, he gives them raging and raving reviews as they're entering into an office. And as soon as there's a decision that he believes doesn't serve his personal interests and not the interests of the American public, then we see them get fired publicly, sometimes unknown unless it's on social media. And so I'd say that's probably one of the big things that makes me nervous about any of the folks that Donald Trump picks, is that while they can be lauded early on, they may only serve 30 days in office because something will come up inevitably. Well, they will have to choose between Donald Trump or the American people. And once they choose the American people, they will be eliminated.
It's a fair point. I mean, look, I mean, and and they're free to say no. They're free not to take a job. So again, things come with choices, right? So there's options. I think for anyone in politics, I think we have to be honest that these are dream jobs. These are things people dream their whole life for, right? To be Secretary of State. I'm sure Senator Rubio is not thinking about the little Marco nightmares he used to have. Now he's thinking about, I can being Secretary of State and negotiating with foreign leaders. So yeah, there is going to come that, I think that risk that would come with working with President Trump. Absolutely. And look, we do need to have functioning government. And again, there's a separate conversation about Congress. Is Congress functional? I mean, the job of Congress is to pass, we don't have a budget, right? So they may pass perhaps a appropriations bill here at the end of the year for transportation, but anybody that works on any kind of policy issues when you're on a continuing resolution, you can't have community funding projects. Congress doesn't work that well together. So I guess we don't want to have the executive branch behaving that same way. But I feel like with President Trump, people know what they're getting into. So you can make the choice, you can avoid the choice, again, and the election, we could get into that too, and kind of what it meant and what happened, because I think a lot of people were really wrong about what happened. But sure, it comes with, I think there's a risk, and they're going to have to take that risk. But I think it comes with a disclaimer. We know how he governs. He governed before, and he's going to be governing again.
Can I say the obvious here? The fact that I have not spoken for over 5 minutes is just beautiful. That's the point of the show. I don't want to have to do too much talking. I want to introduce the topic and let two kick-ass guests have a respectful, good faith dialogue about where they disagree and a little bit of common ground to move forward. We do have to sneak in an ad break, but first I just got to say, I mean, there's a lot there to break down, but some of the differences. Obviously, Obama directly voted by the people, much like Donald Trump. Chris brings up a great point that if you look throughout American history, traditionally that is the role of president, right? It's commander of our armed forces. And then by the time we hit 2012, we only had one of the major party nominees with military experience. 2016, 2020, 2024, 3 consecutive elections where neither major party candidate had that military experience. I guess if you include Trump, who already did the role, there's a lot of good stuff there. So we're going to put a pause. We're going to go to our sponsor because we got to pay the bills. We love the sponsor. Kristal and Chris are going to hang on. Folks, we got great news for you. Don't we ever? The folks at Public. I cannot recommend enough going to public.com/CT because interest rates are falling. And we heard from Jay Powell today. The good news is you could still lock in a 7% yield with a bond account from our friends at public.com. Absolutely. It's a pretty big deal. It's a huge deal, as Donald Trump would say, because when rates drop, so can the interest you earn on your investment. But a bond account lets you lock in a 7% yield with a diversified portfolio of high yield and investment grade corporate bonds. So while other people are watching their returns shrink, oh no, the good news is you could sit back with regular interest payments. You might want to act fast. Your yield is not locked in until you invest. Good news, it takes just a few minutes. I promise. The QR code's right there. Take a second. Reach for your phone, give it a scan, sign up public.com/CT, lock in a 7% yield with a bond account. Only, once again, at public.com/CT. Taylor, if Public wanted to pay me to have that tattooed on me, would that be something we'd be interested in? I'm not looking for a new tattoo, but we love the ad sponsors.
Put it on myself.
But listen, if we want a team of tattoos to put this up here, public.com/CT. Okay, Kristal and Chris. Now, first of all, thank you both, because that was epic all-star back and forth. I do want to ask about the Department of Government Efficiency. And Chris, I want to get your thoughts on this, because this to me is if the Matt Gaetz thing were to go through, it lets Trump investigate the investigators. But Elon Musk's role right now, to me, I don't know how else to call it, but he'll have the chance to regulate the regulators who've been trying to regulate him. Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, Twitter X, all been under federal investigation. SpaceX was slapped with a discrimination lawsuit by the DOJ. Not to mention the billions of dollars in government contracts SpaceX has with the Pentagon and with NASA, and a few $100,000 worth of contracts for Tesla. I mean, this to me, Kristal, you talk about the disentanglement of someone who could oversee regulators here. What are your thoughts on the Department of Government Efficiency led by Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy? It's certainly something different.
Very different, highly unlikely to be actually confirmed. We know that Donald Trump cannot just create a department. Again, these are things that have to be confirmed through Congress, through the Senate. And so I think it's laughable, quite honestly. Like when I think about Elon Musk, all the business that he has before the government, and then to actually lead an actual government agency, it's unfathomable. Like, why is this even, again, these are just marketing things that I think that Donald Trump is really skilled at, is putting out crazy ideas or atypical ideas in hopes that they will get, confirmed or actually passed or created, but also knowing that this is, again, just a loyalty thing to do. Now, Vivek is someone interesting. Again, I think that a lot of his positions when he was on the trail running for president were quite outlandish, but did it make him did it give him a little bit of star power? Did it give him the ability to garner the attention of someone like Donald Trump? Absolutely. But that's absolutely what he was going for as well. And so when I think about the two of them, one being co-leaders, not happening. When I think about their ability to actually put regulations in place and put forth, sensible policies on how to restructure government, how to really understand some of the policies that work and don't work. I go back to my original argument around if a person is qualified, or do we believe that they have the necessary skills to fulfill the role that they are, being put forth in. I don't believe that. I mean, Elon Musk clearly is a brilliant person. I will not take that away from him. But is he made for government? Absolutely not. He is anti-government. I don't think that Vivek, and even in his ability and desire to want to be president of these United States, he does not have what I consider the capability to actually lead in the way in which he has sought. And so, again, I think both of these suggestions are wild and crazy. And will they happen? Absolutely not.
So before I go to Chris, if I am not mistaken, and I may be, and to Kristal's point, we have no idea how this is going to go. There is an argument that Trump can use an executive order to create an agency as opposed to a formal department. Even though it's called the department does take Congress. But there is an advisory agency, and it comes from 1972, a law from 1972. And if I'm not mistaken, what the plan is for him to use executive order to create this apparatus of private sector participants who can advise the president and make recommendations. The problem becomes you need Congress to enact any of the changes. So if you go through, and I think we're all a fan, I think we could all sit there and be like, yeah, the government probably blows a bunch of money that they shouldn't. I'm sure there's pork. I'm sure there's stuff to go in and find. It's one thing to make the recommendations, but it's another thing altogether if you're actually going to pass those spending changes, because that does require Congress. But Chris, I want to get your perspective on this. This, like I said, man, this is something different. I'm going to give Donald Trump points for that. There's no doubt. And to get these people involved. Also, I don't know how Elon Musk possibly has time to take on like another job. He already runs like 5 companies. He does 6 people's job at once. Chris, your thoughts?
No, absolutely. I think well, first of all, JD, when your shirt is that loud, you don't need to talk that much, brother. It's a solid choice,
This one here?
That one there, yeah.
I thought you were going with, this is like the old, I'm a little ashamed that I bought this shirt. This is new, because when you're in Washington, D.C., this is like what every guy wears. This is every white guy in Washington wears this shirt. And I moved back to New York and I actually bought myself one. So you're not wrong.
It looks good, and you have a solid tie. Now, if you had pattern tie, then we'd have to talk. But I love it. Look, I think Kristal's right that there's a lot of signaling going on. It's signaling, but part of the creating a mandate, I think, is sending out ideas and trying to push a direction. And in many respects, I think that outside perspective on efficiency is, there's a theme here. President Trump and many conservatives, when they look at the government, is sort of, this goes back to Ronald Reagan. The theme is starve the beast. So if you reduce taxes, you reduce the size of government, but they'd like to see government working more efficiently. So there is a certain amount of signaling, and I think you're right. JD, I mean, you alluded to earlier, is that it's kind of like you're taking shots at the net, right? It's like we'll try these ideas, and some of them we're willing to kind of take back, but we want to kind of experiment with how some of these ideas will be received. And then the point about executive order, just in general, it's interesting how uneducated sometimes anyone can be if they don't really work or focus on in government when it comes to understanding these things. Legislators legislate, they don't govern. Executives are supposed to implement the law. So the Constitution, the president's role, a constitutional role, is seeing that the laws are faithfully executed. So actually, when I hear a lot of real outrage, for example, about some of the statements about deportation, it's actually the president's role to do that. The Congress's role is to make laws. So my thing is, if Congress wants to make it more liberal, they can make it more liberal. If they want to make it more stringent, they can more stringent. But executives are supposed to enforce the laws. So in that spirit, executive orders are sort of prodding the legislature a little bit, suggesting that, well, we're going to go do this. So I actually think that, anyone that's done sports, there's conditioning drills, right? I actually think that these activities are actually healthy conditioning drills for constitutional principles. So the president starts drafting up executive order. Wait, we don't really like that. Well, we're going to have a hearing. We're going to have this committee come in, and that's what they're supposed to do. So I think some of these ideas are a little wild, and it's. I mean, if anyone saw the Republican convention, it was very wild. I think Hulk Hogan closed it out and ripped his shirt off or something. I mean, it is certainly. And one point is, and it's kind of, and a lot of this is funny, but let's make a historical assessment about this. This was a critical realignment. So anyone that studied presidential elections, critical realignment is when parties essentially change. It's changed the way that it's taken on some issues, and of course there's new personalities that come with that. So it is very, very disruptive and different. And again, this is where the Constitution comes in. The framers were brilliant. I mean, look at all the crazy things that are happening today. If I were a Democrat today, I would change the world shower curtain that I have currently to a Constitution shower curtain, right? With just a big picture of the Constitution, because it's going to outlive the next several presidencies, and it's going to outlive us. The constitutional framework is built for all of the things we're talking about right now.
I'm just excited for when Trump announces Hulk Hogan as the new Interior Secretary, because we still got a bunch of vacancies, folks. Hold on, we're not quite there yet. We got some more names left to go. Quick programming question for you both. I'm going to start with Kristal. Do you have a hard out? Can you hang out a few minutes after 8 o'clock? Because we got things going a little bit late. I want to be respectful of your time and not blow through anything.
I do have a heart out, so I'm not going to be able to go. Yeah.
Okay. Can we hang on to you for a few more moments?
Sure. I got a few more minutes.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Then
Let's do the ad read.
Let's do it. All right. Then let's go with a visit to our sponsors. We'll come right back, and then we'll get Kristal and Chris wrapped out here. Thank you both for your patience and your time and the amazing conversation. Folks, thinking about amazing. Look at these folks over at Public. This is amazing. Time could be running out to lock in a historic yield at public.com. But the good news is you can lock in a 7% or higher yield with a bond account. But here is the thing. The Federal Reserve just announced yet another rate cut. We just got it last week. The plans for more rate cuts this year into next year as well. Good news if you're trying to buy a home. Good news you're paying off that credit card debt. Might not be so good for the interest you can earn on your cash. So if you want to lock in a 7% yield with a diversified portfolio of high yield and investment grade corporate bonds, you might want to act fast. Scan that QR code. Just takes a few minutes to get signed up. Once you lock in your yield, you can earn regular interest payments even as interest rates continue to decline. Lock in that clutch, he called it, 7% yield with a bond account at public.com/CT. But hurry, your yield is not locked in until you invest. Kristal Knight, Chris Neiweem, so grateful for you both. What is tantamount to this show, what's really most important, this is the fan favorite segment. This is what we're here to do. What's called the Say Something Nice segment of the show. I want to give each person an opportunity to say, you know what? Despite the division, despite our differences, despite the disagreements, there's got to be something good that happens with the other side. And I'm going to give Kristal the final word here on this. So, Chris, I'm going to start with you here on this. Oh, we have an animation. Sorry.
Say something.
Nice.
Brought to you by the good folks over at Public. Yeah, that's my mistake. I was supposed to wait for the animation. So final word goes to Kristal here, but Chris, I'll start with you. You know how this goes. Obviously, I know Republicans sweepingly won this election. There's no doubt about it. But history tells us, Chris, we're not very far away from the pendulum swinging back the other side. Give me something nice about Democrats and their place in the new Congress.
Well, I think that Democrats that have been good sports that have said, look, we're not happy with this. Let's look at what we could do differently. What didn't we do? What issues didn't we take on? Where could we have been more descriptive? I think it was difficult to separate yourself, to say it's a new way forward when you've been part of the government. I think that question was tough. But I would say that we're all tested when things are not going well. That's just the way life goes. And look, it's a difficult time. We've all been there, but it's a difficult. I know people that are significantly struggling with the changes that have come. And look, for many people, I have friends that are in the country illegally, and they're concerned about policies and things like that really affect their life. I understand it. So I would say something nice is the resilience and the sort of reflective posture that many Democrats have taken and continue to take it. How are we going to come back to this thing, as opposed to hopefully not just doing the Trump resistance stuff, because it's so overdone. It's like, are we really going to do that for 4 years? Or are we going to try to work on some issues together?
Resilience over resistance. Put that on a bumper sticker. Kristal, I know for your side, this election did not go the way that Democrats wanted. Obviously, this is going to be Trump's ball game. Is there anything you can look forward to, a glimmer of hope, a bit of optimism, something that makes you say, okay, well, at very least, we have this. Say something nice if you can, Kristal.
Right. Well, I think, right now I'd say maybe I don't identify with all the policies on the right, but I think, Republicans they seem to have a leader who wants to try to work on both sides of the aisle in Speaker Johnson. And I think that is a glimmer of hope, in that he should be able to wrangle his party, excuse me. And I think we have to be optimistic about who would become the next speaker or the leader for the Senate side. Hopefully this person is not someone who is really extreme. Hopefully this is someone who will make sure that the guardrails of democracy are truly held and push Donald Trump on many of these confirmation hearings, push Donald Trump on some of these agencies or departments that he wants to create. And so my hope is that whoever becomes the new leader on the Senate side, they will work really closely with Speaker Johnson to make sure that democracy doesn't go too far astray under a leader that we know who has been proven to do things that are dangerous to the public in America.
I'm going to leave it there. I am so grateful for you both for hanging out while we had to get the technical difficulties settled, and then the debate that you two went into. Again, it's kind, it's good faith. We talk about our differences. That's what we're here to do. My special thanks to Chris Neiweem and Kristal Knight. Chris, Kristal, thank you both.
Thanks for having us, JD.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I hope to have you both again. That was great. So that was the first time that we had a guest come back. And Chris had done the show once. We're like, Chris, you want to come back? They were both terrific. I'm really grateful to both of them. That was awesome. We got to respect hard outs in our industry, right? We totally get that. And so I was really grateful. Okay, Taylor, my God, dude. First of all, that was awesome. Guests absolutely crushed it. Did you learn anything tonight, Taylor, from the back and forth about the cabinet thoughts, or what's top of mind for you?
Gotta respect hard outs. I don't have a hard out, so don't worry about me. I think everyone had a really unique perspective on, I guess we all are grappling with the question of how serious these picks are, and if they're actually, is it unfair to look at someone's resume? Like Chris Neiweem made a great point where he's like, oh, well, you could have somebody with an extensive resume. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to do a great job. At the same time, then that puts us into a space where we can't really be predictive and we can't really judge any of these picks. So his combat experience, him being an Iraq war veteran, I think that was something that was quite, reflective. And I think it was interesting to hear his personal connection to Pete Hegseth, who I think is going to get a lot of that scrutiny. But these picks are definitely getting a lot of attention, and I think for good reason.
I also like when Kristal asked him, I was not expecting this question, but the fact that they took over the debate and they're willing to go back and forth, I was like, God, that's just awesome. but I love when she asked Chris, basically, okay, so given your experience, would you feel confident if you were nominated for a secretary position? Could you go in there right now and do this job? And I like that. And it wasn't like an adversarial thing, but it was sort of like, all right, meet me halfway here, man. Like we're all kind of in politics, but like how into politics are we really? Like, can we withstand the scrutiny of a brutal Senate nomination process? And my God, are these things brutal. Remember, they start in committee, and then you got to pass the committee, and then you go to the full Senate, and then you're really in the firing squad out there in front of everyone, Democrats and Republicans, everyone hitting you with every which thing. This is cool too. Oh, is that a beer? I just got handed a beer. What? Not our sponsor, Miller High Life, but if you're watching, Miller High Life. Cheers to High Life. So this is also interesting, Taylor. I love this. I looked this up today. You know, usually if you get nominated by the president for a cabinet and you're not going to get the votes, you withdraw. You're not going to embarrass yourself and you're not going to embarrass the White House. If you know you don't have the votes or support, you're going to withdraw. The last time a nominee actually got roundly rejected by the U.S. Senate, before our time, 1989, George H.W. Bush, guy by the name of John Tower was up for defense secretary, lost, rejected, 47 votes to 53. It does not happen often. And then quick before I toss back to you, the last time a nominee was withdrawn, I had totally blanked on this. Swamp Bug, we'll put that up in a second. I had totally blanked on this, but this story is so wild. Joe Biden announced that Neera Tanden would be his nominee for OMB, Office of Management and Budget. I don't know, I totally blanked on this. This is so wild. And I quote, immediately following the announcement, Tanden deleted over 1,000 of her previous tweets, changed her Twitter bio from progressive to liberal. During the confirmation hearing, Tanden apologized for several of her tweets attacking Republican senators, including tweets calling Susan Collins the worst, comparing Ted Cruz to vampires, and using the name Moscow Mitch for Mitch McConnell, and comparing him to Lord Voldemort. Folks, if you're watching and you're going to be nominated for a cabinet position, don't tweet or say things like that. Taylor?
I mean, who hasn't compared Mitch McConnell to Lord Voldemort in their day? I mean, I think that's like a rite of passage. Anyone who has had any opinion of Mitch, good old Mitchie, has thought he might have been the one you can't name. That's definitely not how you say that. What is it? He who shall not be named.
He who shall not be named.
He who shall not be named. Yeah, I mean, I think if I were being nominated for a position, if I were being nominated for some sort of position, and I knew that I wasn't going to get the votes, I would 100% be one of those people that bows out and doesn't even try. I feel like the embarrassment of putting yourself out there and saying, hey, am I good enough? And then everyone just sort of a resounding like, no, actually. Majority rules that no, you're not good enough. That might actually have some long-term impacts on me. So I don't think I'd have the gall to put myself up on the chopping block. I think we got a good comment here. I'll let you throw to it.
Hell yeah. If JD had to be anywhere in cabinet, what position would he pick? Like if I were in the cabinet, what job do I want? That's a great question. Man, you know, I ask a lot of questions. I don't spend a lot of time thinking about answers. What would I want to do?
Is a press secretary a cabinet position, or is that technically a cabinet position?
It's not. It's not. Although I remember being at a White House briefing one time and someone called Sean Spicer Secretary Spicer, and he giggled so hard. He was so flattered. He's like, man, you just gave me a huge bump. No, honestly, I don't know that I would have a cabinet job. Not to punt on it, but I would definitely. I'd definitely be on the communications side. I'd be a director, deputy, press secretary, one of those. I just feel like that's, you know, what are they gonna do? Give me transportation? I mean, like, come on. Do we have the Trump sock? Can we play the Trump Biden thing? This was.
Yeah, definitely. Let me load that up.
All right. So while you do that, I'm gonna set the stage here. So this was this week. I was really excited for this. So Donald Trump's Grand 2.0 is returned to the White House. He sits down with Joe Biden. Remember, the last time they saw each other was that debate. Yeah, that debate. And then before that, obviously, a long-running contentious history. But this is what the peaceful transition of power is all about. Tale as old as time. Maybe not as old as time, since the 1780s. But when one president goes out the door and a new president's coming in, you shake hands, you say, good battle. You attend each other's inauguration, which Donald Trump did not do. I do expect Joe Biden and Harris to both be out there on January 20th. I could be wrong, but I have a suspicion they'll be out there. So this is a look of what happened inside the Oval Office. Donald Trump with Joe Biden. They met for 2 hours behind closed doors. And then the press came in, and here's how it went.
Thank you. Donald, congratulations. Thank you very much. And looking forward to having like we said, a smooth transition. Do everything we can to make sure you're accommodated, what you need. And we're going to get a chance to talk about some of that today. So welcome.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much. And politics is tough. And it's, in many cases, not a very nice world, but it is a nice world today, and I appreciate it very much. A transition that's so smooth, it'll be as smooth as it can get, and I very much appreciate that, Joe.
You're welcome.
First of all, what I didn't notice until just now rewatching that is that that's a bust of Bobby Kennedy over Joe Biden's shoulder. I've watched this so many times, I never noticed.
You can show the video.
That's RFK. That's the OG RFK. And that bust, there he is. That's Bobby Kennedy, folks. That's the great progressive champion,
And
Bobby
it's,
Kennedy. God, that is absolutely awesome. That is awesome. I had never noticed that until just now. So that's a nice twist of irony. But, you know, Taylor, a lot of people made a big deal of the fact that, like, Biden seemed really happy. He was smiling his way through that, which I didn't look too much into. But I was disappointed Biden didn't use that opportunity to say, this is what we're here to do. We transfer peacefully. We attend each other's inaugurations. That's what it's all about. Right, Donald? I'm sure you'd agree how important it is when you lose an election to fucking admit you lost, right? Great to have you here, Donald. Enjoy the press, right? And he just never took that opportunity for that little middle finger, for the objective disrespect that I feel like Donald, and that's not like I mean criticism. It's just like, if you don't accept the results of the election and then you're going to throw a tantrum and not show up to Joe Biden's inauguration, I felt like this was an opportunity for Biden to kind of stick it into his eye a little bit, but we didn't get any of that. This was very cordial.
Yeah, I mean, Scranton Joe would never do something like that, right? You know, this is one of those moments where you just sort of smile and nod and just say, hey, you know, this is how you do it, but you don't actually say this is how you do it. You just sort of like give him the old wink. Let's be honest. I feel like Joe is excited to leave. I feel like he is so done. I mean, he always wanted the White House. He ran about 17 times to become president. He finally did it. He's the only guy to ever beat Trump. He is always going to have that as being part of his legacy. So he feels like he has something over the guy. I mean, and now Trump also, like, when you think about it from like a power dynamic perspective, like, Trump also feels like he has the power over Biden. I mean, that was an embarrassing debate performance from Biden. And that was Trump. I mean, it wasn't even Trump's doing that led to that, but still that I could see that being a sort of like a ego boost for Trump. The fact that he literally forced somebody out of the Oval Office by being on stage with them and in what transpired after. But Joe is going to be very happy to say that that he was the only guy to beat Trump, and I still believe that, and we saw it from the lip reading clip that he had with Obama at who was that? RFK's funeral. Who was it?
Kennedy's funeral. Yeah.
Right. So at that funeral, it seemed like there was the lip reading experts. It actually was not Common Threads is switching to 7 p.m. It was actually, which is an amazing video on our Instagram if you want to check it out. It actually wasn't that. It was likely Biden saying, she's not as strong as me, talking about Harris. She's not as strong as me. And Biden, and then Obama being like, I know, there's still time. That's what I heard last from that lip reading. So I know I'm really pulling from a lot of sources here, but from that, I gather that Biden still believes he could have done it. He was forced out. There was no really escape for him at that point. So I think he really is walking out with a little bit of swagger, like, hey, my party gave up on me. I could have taken this guy out. I've taken him out before. And he's walking out with swagger, like he's not on a beach, just like on regular concrete.
It's Brett Favre insisting he could still play quarterback for the Jets, right? It's Emmitt Smith going to Arizona. It's Marty Brodeur finishing his career not in a Devils uniform, but in St. Louis Blues jersey, which looks strange, right? But it's that fight that you got if you're a lifelong competitor, which Joseph Robinette Biden is in this arena. Agree or disagree, you may not like him, but whatever. But to your point, the man ran for president in 1988. He ran again in 2008. The man clearly always wanted to be president, right? That's got to be a really tough pill to swallow. That you get one crack, right? And it's not like James K. Polk, who runs once and gets everything done and is like, all right, now I'm done. It's like, clearly, you want 2 terms if you run for the damn thing. And I wonder, God, I can't even imagine what goes through your mind if you're Joe Biden. You're thinking like, I don't think I had a bad presidency, but clearly the American voters disagreed to some degree or didn't like the VP or whatever it is. I mean, we're going to be spilling ink over this for the next 100 years of American history. While I still have you, I don't want to switch it up. Okay, Maha Khan says, Trump's previous administration had one of the highest turnover rates in modern presidential history. Correct. Do we foresee another high turnover happening again, especially with the latest nominations? What a great question. Do we expect comparable turnover? My guess would be less than the chaos we had the first time. Because that was truly, to Kristal's point earlier, that was bedlam. It was firing by tweets. That was absolute chaos. I think I blacked out a lot of it from my brain because it was really tough to cover as a reporter. I was also blocked on Twitter by Trump at the time as a White House reporter. So that was tough when like everyone else is getting the breaking news notices or sees the tweets directly that informs our next hour of work and I can't get them quite as easily. That was a whole thing. So I would personally expect that now, because he's won, he's got the mandate, he's got much more say, even if it's his last term. I expect less turnover would be my bet because I think he's learned the game and he knows to put people around him. He's had all these years. He's had these last 4 years that Biden's been president. He's been prepping this. The fact that we have the nominations announced as quickly also tells you that the groundwork has been set for this for a really long time. They were playing ready to go. If we win, XYZ, out the gate. We're 8 days in. He's already got half the cabinet named. Taylor, what are your thoughts there to Maha's questions? That's a really good one.
Yeah, I really like that question. I didn't know you were blocked by Trump. First off, I mean, we'll get to this question, but you were blocked by Trump. You couldn't see his tweets.
No, when I was the long and short of it is when I was a reporter, I responded to something he tweeted about the stock market. And if you remember the old Twitter, like if you had a reply that would go viral, if people liked the reply more than the original post, then your tweets were populated. And to be fair, I did post like 4 fact checks in a row, and all of my responses to Trump were going viral. And then I opened up the app, and either Trump or Dan Scavino blocked me. And you never want to be the story as a reporter, but I did sit for a few interviews, like U.S. News and World Report, and a few others who were like, "How do you do your job?" If it's like, imagine being the only kid in class. A writer wrote, "Imagine being the only kid in class who doesn't get the assignment from the teacher." And you have to figure it out, and everyone else around you does. So yes. Anyway, but then I was part of a lawsuit from Columbia University, like a class action suit, forcing the hand of the president to unblock all the accounts he had blocked. And we won, and I was unblocked, and I can now view @RealDonaldTrump tweets. Anyway, all right, Taylor, back to you.
That's insane. That's insane. I mean, that's JD blocked by Trump. Nice banner. I love that. I mean, that's your fault for fact checking them. I mean, I really think that like as a reporter, you should have just fallen in line and just realized who's in charge and then just figure it out. Or banners. I like the JD, I like JD about to be arrested, like that sort of like banner where like he's in trouble. But to get to this question about the highest turnover in presidential history, I think it can't really be understated with these picks. Like, say these picks go through, this is quite revolutionary. I know that's an aggressive term to use, but these are like having RFK leading the HHS is such a clear shot at our normal, like what we expect, like the FDA and all these agencies that apparently are on the chopping block. It's it's really strange because I think we're getting to a moment where like a lot of the institutions are being questioned and being like, even like CBS pulling their broadcasting license, a threat from Trump. A lot of other things, like a lot of different just things that we consider to be normal and regular functioning. Yeah, so I think a lot of these picks, Tulsi Gabbard, intelligence, these are people that have been really strongly against the large administrative state. And this is where, and those maverick type of attackers are getting cabinet positions. I have no clue how that's going to shake out in terms of turnover, but I think it can't be understated how big that those moves actually are in disrupting what we consider to be normal operations. Last in 2016, I am sure you know this, like every single person that was selected was almost like you got like, what was it, Rex Tillerson, you got like your Mike Pence, you got all these regular DC folks, and these are like, this is the cabinet of absolute disruptors. These are like I'm not going to use like bad terms, but these are really disruptive people who do not like the way things are. And they're not looking for stability. They're looking for revolutionary type change. So I don't think that really can be understated.
Was drained. There we go. Got this out. God damn, the man, Japan Dan here for the win. Way to go, dude. Great minds. I was like, bud, can you read my mind right now? I'd love to put up the current count for the cabinet. In 2016, the line was drain the swamp. I feel like right now it's just like take a wrecking ball to the whole fucking thing. I mean, that's really kind of what he's going for. So this gives you a gauge. Shout out to our friends over at Politico. They're keeping a great running tally. Shows you at least the nominations. In the top left there, Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles, the architect of this year's campaign. So don't forget, we still got Treasury. Treasury is going to be some like CNBC Trump adjacent dude. I can almost guarantee that. It's going to be some voice that like we hear all the time, Taylor, when we watch Squawk Box. It's going to be like one of those dudes who calls in a lot and kind of like defends tariffs like that. That's who's good. That's who's getting the Treasury gig. And then, of course, you got Interior. We love our parks. Agriculture, Commerce, Labor. We still got HUD open. We got Transportation, Energy, Education, Veterans Affairs. Like, I don't know, maybe it doesn't go well for Hegseth at the Pentagon, so he goes over to VA. Trade, CEA is Council of Economic Advisors. That's still got to go. Small Business Association, OMB, that was the Neera one earlier. Office of Management and Budget. The type of thing probably Musk and Ramaswamy want to cut. And then OSTP is the Office of Science and Technology Policy. Keep it in mind, you need 51 here at the U.S. Senate to make these happen. I feel like so much of it. But, dude, doesn't this also communicate to you how insane the next 3 months are going to be?
Absolutely, absolutely wild, because there's still so much to shake out, and if these early picks are any indication, it's not going to be the broad consensus on who you would trust with these. I'm like kind of doing in my head like a little bit of a predictive game here. Like I'm trying to figure out like remember like Steve Mnuchin was our Treasury Secretary. Who's our new Treasury Secretary? And I know there was a let's highlight this comment. Same to Taylor. If JD had to be anywhere in the cabinet, which position would he pick? Me, I'm going incredibly boring, and I think urban planning is like the coolest shit. But agriculture is where a lot is. So it would be one of those two, but I've never like been on a farm more than my Grammy's ranch. So I don't know if I'm actually a pro there. But yeah, it's we definitely got a next few interesting months here. Who do you think are for these really major positions here? Like you're talking Treasury, you're talking agriculture, labor. What if hear me out. Hear me out. Labor. Yeah. There's no way that you can take a guy like it's not Marty Walsh. Who's the guy that spoke at the RNC and he represented Teamsters? Sean O'Brien.
Gone, yes.
Sean O'Brien. they wouldn't. They couldn't do somebody like that. I don't even know if he would take it. But that's something that Democrats would push through.
Yes.
Now, he ended up endorsing the Harris campaign, if I'm not mistaken. He at least made an appearance alongside Representative Ocasio-Cortez down the stretch. This was like during the last chaotic week before the election when every little quoted misstep was being blown out. It was like Mark Cuban made his comment that was all over Fox, and Trump said this, and this was all over whatever. He did sit for an interview with AOC, I remember, and obviously she was there on behalf of Democrats. I don't know if he was actually endorsing the Democrats, but you're right. The fact that he spoke at the RNC in and of itself was really interesting. Feels like Trump is basically rewarding cronies who have been loyal. Typical big biz exec, see mafia type beat. That's what Swamp Bug has to say. Yeah, I mean, the installed loyalists part is like, yeah, of course. I think that's like, at this point, I think it'd be foolish not to say that Trump surrounds himself with loyalists and people that he wants to bend to his will. Do you remember the name Jeff Sessions? That just popped in my brain. Yeah, because that was like, so I'll never forget the Trump tweet where he called his own, this was the first attorney general of the first Trump White House. And he's like, something beleaguered Jeff Sessions. I'm like, first of all, how many words is beleaguered on Scrabble? That's got to be a good one, right? Trump used it in a tweet to describe his own attorney general. Not a big swing of confidence. That had to do with his refusal, I think, to shut down the Russia investigation, like fire James Comey. So clearly Trump's looking to go in and be like, I want people who are just going to do what I want to do. And to be fair, have there been presidents in U.S. history who have expanded the powers of the executive branch and in doing so have chipped away at the checks and balances that otherwise hold the president to account? Absolutely. Hate to make another Trump-Roosevelt comparison, but like there are so many scary similarities between FDR and Teddy Roosevelt on the one hand and Trump on the other hand. That is absolutely the FDR playbook. Like I know we look back in history and we're like, oh yeah, the good guys won. And the good guy came in, he fixed after the Depression, but like you drastically expanded the power of the presidency. Abe Lincoln did the same thing. I'm not going to like, please don't come at me and be like, don't compare Trump to like, I get it. But there's something to be said about from time to time testing the limits of your executive authority. And history has shown us that when it has happened, it has not always been a bad thing. Maybe that's part of Trump's momentum.
I can't believe you would say such a thing. That is so dangerous for you to be speaking like that. It's sometimes not terrible if the presidential power is expanded. Do you realize the slippery slope? I mean, yes, yeah, no, that is actually a really fascinating take that you don't hear at all. Yeah, I mean, I don't know why you would say something that interesting after mentioning Jeff Sessions, which is obviously I was dying to talk about Jeff Sessions, but I mean, no, I mean, yeah, FDR, I mean, the New Deal, like all of these big, like kind of what liberals would consider like extremely progressive ideas were only possible because of this expansion of power. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a tendency, this is just me personally, I think there's a tendency to draw parallels to recent history, but we just have such a unique country, and we like to draw comparisons to the way other countries have formed, and just that's human nature. But I really think we just have such a unique circumstance that almost can't be compared to other times in human history and political history. So I don't know what you do with that, but I just think we're just in such a unique position that I can't really be, yeah, like FDR, like you can pull that example, and that is controversial because not a lot of people think about the expansion of a presidential power, and they think that's immediately paradoxical to a democracy.
I do think it's not a direct comparison, obviously, because at the same time, we're talking about Trump launching a government efficiency agency to, at the same time, strike down parts of what the federal government can do, which is very not Rooseveltian. But, you know, my view of that era between 29 and 1932 was Herbert Hoover faced with the Great Depression, faced with the stock market sell-off and being like, I don't really know what I can get away with out here. I'm not taking broad strokes. And that's what the American people responded to, is that lack of action. Historic election in 32, and they're like, you know what? Let's just keep electing the dude. Let's put FDR in the White House, election after election after election. The dude was so good at the job, we had to pass a constitutional amendment to prevent people from being president as long as FDR was. So, but the Rooseveltian, this is my other take, is that, now we're way off topic, but the Roosevelt-Trump connection, what I do like, and this is my New York City bias showing, is like, you're talking about dudes, especially, this is now the Teddy Roosevelt Trump connection. Silver spoon, New York City kids, extraordinarily wealthy families relative to the rest of the population, still somehow managed to fashion themselves, present themselves, sell themselves to the American people. I represent the everyday person. I'm putting on a garbage vest. Or if you're Teddy Roosevelt, he's like, I'm rocking the hat and I'm going out there with my guns to the Badlands, folks. This is who I am. I represent you. But they're both these like super liberal, kind of elitist New York City people who won the hearts and minds of the everyday American. That's my last comparison between Roosevelt and Trump.
Just to chime in there, I listened to Bill Burr, who's a really a favorite comedian of mine, and one of his bits was that Trump has never looked happier than when he was in the McDonald's. He was one of the people, and he's like, "This is how they do the fries." It was like taking like a 10-year-old around the back of McDonald's, and like how excited he was. Like he's never been happier than when he was actually like making a Big Mac.
And I can't imagine Teddy Roosevelt was any happier than when he's like out in South Dakota shooting buffaloes and stuff. I mean, right? He's like, man, who needs the big high life of New York City for me? I'm leaving all that behind. So while I still have you, the other thing I still want to ask you about, do you have a Blue Sky account or a Mastodon account as part of the bigger conversation here of a lot of liberals, Taylor, and they're looking at the state of Twitter X and they're saying, for the love of God, get me off this platform. Get me off to anywhere else. And I was getting into it on Twitter today with a few people like, oh, I can't believe all the liberals left up. But I'm like, bro, when the owner of this was my take, when the owner of the platform comes in and he is spreading conspiracy theories, as being Elon Musk, about Paul Pelosi, about Pizzagate, about migrants, the dude literally tweeted a few weeks before the election, Kamala hates Christians. How in the fuck do you expect any sane liberal who's proud to be a Democrat to say, yeah, this is the platform for me? I think he has made the echo chamber silo thing so much worse than it ever was before. And liberals are just leaving Twitter, despite the fact that they've been on Twitter for well over a decade, building up followings, building up viral tweets, and they're like, nah, screw this. I'm going off to Blue Sky or another platform, and I feel like there we go. The silos just metastasize.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't have a Blue Sky account or like a Mastodon. I don't know. That sounds like an account my girlfriend wouldn't approve me having. But I mean, the idea that this has become like a Republican silo is actually quite fascinating. I know that when I started the Common Threads account, which obviously we started from 0, we're up to 300 followers on X, and we're very happy about that. Follow us on Instagram. Smash that like bucket. Smash all the things, like just like everything, just so you get notified when we go live. We go live every Thursday at 7 p.m., baby. But all I mean to say is that when I created this extremely new account, I followed people on the left, I followed people on the right, and what I saw in the feed was like disturbing. Like not only in a political sense where there was obviously very like pro-Trump, like, oh my God, like we have to change everything type of rhetoric, but there was also like fight videos, guys like beating up women. There was like, there's honestly really bad shit, nudity and like pornography, like all throughout the site. It's absolutely become a wasteland. I've been used to using X because of, and you probably for the same reason, which is just try to keep up with the news, and us working in news industries, like we have to sort of like have our pulse on things. But I mean, it was remarkable for me to take a pretty brand new account and just see what the For You feed was on X. It was quite it was brain rot, as our technical director Dan would say. It was absolute brain rot, Neanderthalic, just bullshit.
My new Twitter bio. It's just so spot on. Yes, I've been incredibly disheartened to see the platform because, my take on the old Twitter was yes, inherently were there, and I was part of the problem, I guess, were there like legacy blue checkmark reporters who dominated the platform? Yes. But I did not mind. I know no newsroom is perfect, no journalist is perfect, mistakes get made. I felt like it was good to have one place where sound reported, actual source-backed or fact-based news was able to thrive and was inherently had an elevated place in our dialogue. And it was still a platform for everyone. Everyone could snap and still be a part of it, but it became a go-to destination for news. And if you were a conservative, if you were a liberal commentator, no matter where you were, you did have a place in the old one. And I sense what Elon Musk has tried to do, but in doing so, and I don't know what the financials of the company look like, but I have to imagine he wanted this to be the global town square for public debate. And he got what he wanted in that really he wanted a Trump victory. But coming through, tweeting the conspiracies, clearly putting his finger on the pulse. There was this other one, and this lived on Twitter. The most shocking thing I saw of the campaign was the @America handle. This is the America Super PAC. This is a PAC by Elon Musk. He put a shit ton of money into it to support Trump, support Republicans. The America PAC account made and created, produced, and published one of the most heinous attack ads against Vice President Kamala Harris I've ever seen. I'm not even going to repeat it, what it said. I'm not going to flag it for you to put it up. And obviously that has the implicit endorsement of the most powerful figure on the platform, who, by the way, we know has gone to his engineers and said, because he was like mad about this football game thing. After a football game, he like called a middle of the night meeting with his engineers and was like, artificially boost my posts so that they read way higher than anything. This @America attack ad, which was so celebrated by people, was one of the most grotesque things I've ever seen. I said, that's really the degradation of where our national politics is right now. And I feel like that is, for all the good that happens on the platform, Twitter X, whatever you call it, it's sad to see. And I don't know that I'm yet at the level where I'm like, all right, I'm jumping ship, because like a lot of other people, I've just been on it for so many years. And I got so many archived things that from time to time I revisit or whatever it is. It's tough to start from scratch and be like, all right, I got to give up on this thing because it's just so antithetical to my personal values. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely it is almost completely unrecognizable from what it used to be, which was a source for valid reporting. Now, we also got to sort of self-reflect and think about, like, reporting is evolving, and these new mediums and these new individual people that are reporting on issues. Like, I had this really interesting discussion with this guy who's an investor, and he's really kind of tapped in, and he's also like a big Elon guy. Like, he's like big believer in like, oh my God, mainstream media is like done, and it's this and it's that, and there's all these flaws, and what it is independent media. That's what's going to do it. And what I tried to sort of understand from him, but also explain to him, was that, at a certain point, say we start an account and we're reporting on news, and it's getting bigger and it's getting bigger and it's getting bigger. At a certain point, we're going to be called out for when we get things wrong. And we're going to get called out when we don't actually report on the facts, and we start putting a little bias into it, and we start putting other things into it. And then we're like, all right, listen, if we want to stay a legitimate account, we're going to have to hire a couple more people and actually make this like a real operation here. We're going to actually have to fact check our stuff. So like when we say that there's like a bombing in Tehran, like we're going to check Reuters and make sure that actually happened. So it's funny. It's like all these independent media sources that they say are going to be the future of journalism and media. I see them just sort of tilting just the same exact way as traditional media. Now, at a certain point, they'll probably stop, and they'll probably, just sort of be a bunch of islands. But the principles do not go away. The principles of you have to get things right or else you will be held accountable, whether you learn it early or whether you learn it later. Those individual accounts that are like sources of news, like real news that other like mainstream media outlets are trying to keep you from, they're going to be exposed as not having all the facts right. But I certainly encourage more people to get involved in like in creating that buzz. Of course, that's going to lead to more misinformation and everything, but I just see this sort of like this natural ramp into becoming more like a network and more like a legitimate publication, and that's just almost intrinsic in reporting the news. Like, you're going to get bigger.
I still don't have. I mean, I've been as deeply steeped in this world the last decade of my life as anyone, and I still don't have an answer between what the sweet spot is. Like, how do you find the balance between access journalism? It's good to lower the barrier to entry to anyone, and it's great that social media, like, great. You can be who you are. You can live wherever you live. You don't have to be a coastal elite. You don't have to live in New York City. You don't need a blue check mark to affect change in the national conversation. That's awesome. And I don't know where the line is between that, which is I think a pretty core foundational belief of mine, as well as it is that, yeah, well, you have to go to the Reuterses and the Associated Presses of the world, because that is the highest level of work that we have to try and have as much confidence in as possible. And I don't know how you find that balance. The old Twitter, to me, was about as close as you were going to come to that balance, where inherently the New York Timeses of the world had an elevated status relative to, and like if my mom signed up for an account, New York Times could have more prominence in my mom's account. So this we flagged. This is posted by Guardian. Guardian will no longer post on Elon Musk's X from its official account. This was just yesterday. The Guardian's announced it'll no longer post. In an announcement to readers, the news organization said it considered the benefits of being on the platform were outweighed by the negatives, citing the, quote, often disturbing content found on it. The newspaper says, quote, we want to let readers know we'll no longer post on any official Guardian editorial accounts on the social media site X. They said content on the platform about which it had longstanding concerns included far-right conspiracy theories and racism. It added that the site's coverage of the U.S. presidential election had crystallized its decision. This, to me, leads to the obvious question, which is now, who in the hell has time to read everything that's on X, jump over to Threads, now go open up Mastodon, now go over to Blue Sky, now go over to fill in the blank here of whatever the next news-based app is, and then sit there as trying to be as well-informed a voter as possible, saying, well, here's all the different echo chambers of the same story that I just spent the last 90 minutes of my life reading to be as balanced and informed as possible. Now what's my opinion? That seems like such an undue burden, as opposed to having, right, a sort of a centralized place. There's no easy answers here, man. But that's amazing, though, about Guardian, right? And I don't think they're not the first and not going to be the last one to be like, yeah, I'm out of this. This is a mess. This place is a disaster.
Yeah, I mean, I also don't mind putting it on record that, like, while I was at CNBC decided they would no longer be posting on X, like, because Musk took over, and because of just, I guess, the material he was posting, and because they had a lot of moral disagreements with him, and of course he posted some terrible things. Like, let's not get that wrong, but CNBC did not, as an organization, want to post further on X. My show in particular, we actually believe that was, like, I still believe that you should go to where people are and that you shouldn't really judge a platform. Now, of course, these are individual companies. They have a right to decide what platforms they also want to help, right? Because if they post on something and that back and forth, that's going to be helpful to the platform because it's just more content, it's more useful to them. So obviously, like, you put in work to help out these platforms. But yeah, my opinion on that is that I think that you should just go wherever the person is. We broadcast on Rumble. There's a lot of crap on Rumble. But Rumble is, honestly, we need to be there. And there's going to be maybe some vitriolic conversations. But I know Rumble is also committed to not just being this, like, kind of far right place. Like, they want to expand and broaden what they let in. Dave Portnoy, Barstools, they stream on Rumble. Like, it doesn't have to be a political platform, but these platforms, they either have to make a decision or they're going to moderate at such a degree where they'll shut people out, or they let everyone in. And I think X is a place where everyone is allowed in. And what we're seeing I mean, I don't know. Is it out of the realm of possibilities that what we're seeing, this discourse that we're seeing on X, is not a predictive of what happened during the election, but more of reflective of it? Like, I don't think there was a lot of people that went on X and that were just like, oh my God, like look at all these Trump memes. Like, I don't think there was enough millions of people doing that to sway the election. I don't think X swayed the election. But I think that because of a lot of the dampening that happened before Musk took over, it was hiding a lot of actual sentiments that existed among Americans about what a clown show they thought the Biden administration was, and a lot of their actual feelings that would otherwise be suppressed. I think that is really the big question, right? Is this amplifying and actually giving legs to a movement that wasn't there before? Or is this just reflecting what was already there, and now we're just sort of coming to grips with the way a lot of Americans have felt for a while?
It is a great question, man. I know my mom's not sitting there opening up Twitter. She doesn't give a shit. She doesn't know what's going on there, right? I mean, I think this gets to the point. It's like, does the average person, are they on the platform? Do they really care what happens there? Probably not. But will someone like my mother see on the ABC Evening News something that big that happens on the platform about like Musk buying it or Musk tweeting this wild conspiracy thing? She might be. She'll come across it in other avenues. Right. Just not kind of direct to consumer, so to speak. Dude, I say this every week when I was like, this is my favorite show. This is my favorite show that we did. Technical difficulties be damned. Before we wrap, Taylor or Japan Dan, is there anything top of mind here that you also would you like to chime in? Anything else we need to talk about here before we wrap up for our loyal viewers watching at home? We crushed it. This was awesome. You guys did a great job.
Sadly,
that VO if you want.
We have this little VO. This is just a Musk tweet. This is him saying, like, you are the media now to all of X users. Linda Yaccarino saying that the CEO of X, she came from NBC Universal, just confirmed the platform usage reaching all-time high today. That was on November 13th, so that's yesterday. So I mean, there's X is a private company now, so you can't really take these stats. You got to take them all with a grain of salt. You don't know if that's actually real. They could literally pick that out, all-time usage. I mean, you can choose that from a lot of different sources. But yeah, I think that these social media platforms are really onto something, in that, like, interacting with the audience, like the way that we can put up comments so quickly and just sort of react to them and understand, like, I'll just put up a random one, but like, we can continue to react to all these different comments and exactly what they mean whenever we want. And I think that's really breaking the fourth wall. And I think TV misses out a lot on that. And it's something that on Common Threads that we're going to continue to explore. I know we're ahead of this and we're early, and god damn does dark mode look good. I got to tell you, I really love this. It looks so damn good.
Are you kidding me? Oh yeah, how'd I go the whole damn show without even referencing the obvious that you guys cooked this week? Holy this is awesome. Yes, thank you.
Amazing. Look at this stuff.
That's part of the untold, dude. You look at this. This is awesome. You guys just absolutely crushed it.
Why don't you bring us up?
Listen, what are we gonna do here, folks? That's what it's all about. It was an amazing show tonight. I do want to thank our guests. It's been a while since we've had them out here, but they did an awesome job. That was Kristal and Chris. Really grateful to them. Grateful to Dan, Taylor, Chris, everyone else here who has made this show happen. We do this every Thursday night, and it's getting better and better by the week. That's at least what my mom says when she watches from home. Thanks for taking the time. Tune in as always. And we're back with a whole new show next week. Let us know your comments and thoughts between now and then. Be safe, love one another, find some common ground out there in a world of angry, divisive political rhetoric. We'll see you next week, live from Brooklyn next Thursday night. Woo!